Exclusively on the OysterLink Podcast, the fastest growing hospitality job platform in the US, Jimmy Everett shares the raw, unfiltered story of his rise, from working at the world renowned 11 Madison Park to founding Driftwood in his hometown in Florida. Hello, Jimmy. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, Jimmy, to start, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your career path.
I was born and raised less than a mile. I was actually born less than a mile from Driftwood, where the restaurant is. That wasn't planned out. That was coincidental. But I'm very much a local from this area, Boynton Beach. When I was, I grew up. I got into trouble when I was young, in the 14, 15, and that kind of pushed me to have to be working. So I did start in hospitality at a pretty young age. I started as a busboy around 14, got into the kitchen at 15. And that's kind of how it started. From there, at that time, this area wasn't really known for good quality food. In fact, I didn't even know what a real good restaurant meant or what good chefs were, because at that point I hadn't really done too much research, and also getting information was a lot more difficult back then. You actually had to go buy cookbooks. You couldn't just ask your phone, to give you information, and look through Instagram and stuff like that. Once I got very interested in cooking, and I didn't really have an interest in hospitality at the beginning. It was definitely more the kitchen culture. That's what attracted me initially. Obviously, over the first few years of my career, that is when I developed that passion for hospitality and better quality food and stuff like that. But I started off at a country club down in South Florida. I ended up going to the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York when I was almost 18. So I did the year and a half program there for the associates. I did an externship. In the middle of that, I did an externship on Nantucket Island at a restaurant called American Seasons with Chef Michael Lascola. And then I went back, I graduated, and then I returned to Nantucket for another season there. And then I had my heart set on New York City at the time. I was going to school in upstate New York, and I had the opportunity to take the train down into the city while I was going to school and eat at some of the restaurants and do a few stages. So I was definitely, after graduating, I knew I wanted to be in New York City, and there was one restaurant, which was WD-50 at the time, that really stood out to me as just being that at the time, that was like the cutting edge restaurant in the country. They were the first restaurant really doing the weird stuff, I guess. There was quotations in there, but that's when the molecular gastronomy kind of started blowing up, coming over from Europe, coming from a lot of those restaurants in Spain and in England. And at the time, it was about like Fat Duck in England, El Bulli, Mugaritz, Arzak. There were some restaurants, but in the U.S., there was very, very few restaurants. I think at the time it was like the French Laundry. Thomas Keller was definitely the top chef in the country at the time. So as I was kind of in that younger, I was a young cook. That was my goal, was to become a great cook. I had no desire to own a restaurant, become a chef even. I wanted to cook, and I wanted to become the best I possibly could. Quite frankly, I still have that attitude today. I come in, I own my own restaurant, but I'm still coming in with the same purpose, trying to do a little bit better every day. That's a really big part of, I think everybody needs to have something that they can motivate themselves with, rather than just looking for outside things to motivate. So as I mentioned, I was very focused on New York City. I ended up, before I went to New York, I ended up visiting my sister in California, just for a few months. And then, and the idea was to save up money, but to be working to save up money. But in reality, that's when I went to the French Laundry and Bouchon, and I did the Napa wine trails. Even though I was under 21, I think I was 19 at the time. But I wanted to kind of see a lot of those things I had heard about in culinary school, and then also at American Seasons on Nantucket, because that was really the first restaurant doing good quality food, I guess, like that higher level food. At the country club, it was really more of like prime rib night, and you choose your protein, your starch, your veg, your sauce, sort of thing. Whereas at American Seasons on my externship, that was the first time I really saw very intentionally sourced products, very good quality products. stuff that was like literally coming from the farm that day it was harvested. And that's where I really started developing that passion for higher quality. Sorry for jumping around, but
That's
my heart was set on New York City, WE50. I finally got to New York, but I was broke because I spent the money I saved. I spent at the French Laundry, frankly. So I got to New York. I was staying on a friend's couch in Brooklyn, and I was going every day with a resume to WD50. That was literally my focus for the first. I think it was like 3 to 4 weeks. Literally every single day, hop on the train, go drop off a resume. I knew that the hostess that was taking my resumes very well, but they weren't hiring, and it came to a point where I just needed money to survive. I was kind of outstaying my welcome. I had a few couches to crash on, but that only lasts for so long. I ended up my friend that I was sleeping on his couch. He was working at a restaurant called Tabla, which was owned by Danny Myers, or the Union Square Hospitality Group, and he had told me about the restaurant next door, that a new chef came in, fired half the staff, sent the sous chefs home to shave, just kind of really cleaning house. And I was like, well, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a good, I wanted to get my butt kicked. I was young. I was learning about all these really high level restaurants, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to experience that. Even if it was at the expense of chefs screaming at me and yelling at me and even firing me, whatever. I wanted to have that under my belt. So to me, that sounded like a great opportunity. And it turned out that was actually 11 Madison Park. And that was 3 weeks after Daniel Hum had took over at 11 Madison Park.
okay.
So that was my first job in New York, was 11 Madison Park.
Nice.
Literally less than a month after Daniel Hum started there. So obviously, fast forward several years, he became #1 in the world and one of the best chefs in the world. But at that time, that was us trying to do 3 Michelin star food, but we also had to do 300 to 400 covers every night. So it was really a challenge. There was a high turnover rate, as I mentioned. The standards were really high. The atmosphere was tough. I personally was fine with it, but there was definitely plenty of people that weren't. It was a very intense atmosphere. So I spent about 14 months there, a little over a year. I mean, I was a very young cook, and that was the first restaurant that I jumped on the meat station. And when I staged there, the meat cook that I was helping, he got fired. So it was like, I had to, that was just my door that opened. And so I was like, okay, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I figured it out. And so I ended up working the meat station there, which was definitely known as the hardest station in the restaurant. And like I said, about 14 months, I met some of my best friends there. That was a great first job in New York because there was such a high turnover rate. I met so many connections, so many other chefs and cooks in the city, that it was just, I didn't realize it at the time, but that really opened up a lot of doors for me, after that. So I ended up leaving 11 Madison Park because I got an opportunity to work at WD50. So one of the many people that had come through 11 Madison Park's doors, one of them, he's passed now, but his name was Marcelo. He had left 11 Madison Park. He was working at WD50, and then he was leaving WD50. So he was looking for a replacement. So that's where he reached out to me, knowing that I'd want to work there. And I did 2 stages. I got hired, and turned out being the best job of my life. Even to this day, working for myself, that was probably when I say best job, I just mean, I think that was really a very critical timing because of my age and my level of experience at that point. But I really think the big thing that WD50 and Wiley did for me as a young chef, a cook, was change the way I think about food. So up to that point, I love Madison Park. You were trained to be a soldier. Yes, chef, we chef. Just do as I say, not as I do. Don't ask questions, just do it. At WD50, when I started there, complete opposite. Wiley he would ask you, well, why are you doing that? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, they were just asking those very simple but very important questions. So at WD-50, I was required, as a cook, I was required to create the dishes that were coming off my station. I had no idea that was what I was signing up for. I mean, this was a Michelin star restaurant. I was just like, no, I'm trying to learn this. I'm not ready to do this sort of thing, but didn't matter. That's the job. So it really had a huge impact on how I looked at food. Rather than looking at, say, like ingredients with, okay, well, these are the classic preparation methods. These are the classic cooking methods. This is how you would typically roast a carrot or even butcher a fish, for instance. That everything was questioned. It was always, why are we doing it this way? And is there a better way to do it? So that WD-50, when I say it was the best restaurant I ever worked at, that's what I mean, where it really drastically changed the way that I thought about food. Which in turn, that was a huge like pivot point for me in my career. So I never intentionally wanted to leave WD-50, but one of my good friends who I worked with at 11 Madison Park, Jared Gadbaugh, when he left 11 Madison Park, he had gone to go work at Alto with Michael White. So we kept in touch. He's one of my best friends to this day. But he was trying to convince me to be a part of an opening on Central Park South that he was working on with Michael White, which was Maria. So to me, Italian food sounded boring as hell. Like, I mean, I don't want to leave WD-50 where I'm doing fried mayonnaise and pickled beef tongue and, like a carrot and coconut sunny side up egg, to go do Italian food. It just sounded really lame. That was ignorance, obviously, but to me, that wasn't exciting. And also, I was a cook. I didn't think that I was ready to go be a manager or a sous chef, because in my head, when you take that step, you're not learning anymore. Now you're teaching. So in my head, it was like a very cut dry. You're either learning or you're teaching. So I was completely wrong, obviously, but that in my head, that's why it took him probably 3 months to convince me to leave WD-50. So I finally did. I ended up spending a little under 2 years at WD-50 before I left, but it was to be a part of the opening team, actually pre-opening of Maria. So I was when I started working with Michael White and Jared Gadbaugh, that was actually at Alto a few months before Maria opened. We were working on R&D, just basically testing all the recipes, trying out everything, and just kind of piecing together what would be Maria's opening menu. And then opening day came, we opened. I think we had like something like 24 to 36 hours from when we turned the gas on till we had to open. So it was a real crunch. And this is a big restaurant. It was a very intense opening, but it was all friends. Jared Gadbaugh, that he was the chef de cuisine opening. He was one of my best friends. Our friend Amador, who we used to shoot pool with till 4 a.m. every night. He was one of the sous chefs. Lauren DeSteno, who is actually now the Alta Maria Group corporate chef. She was one of the sous chefs. We were all friends that we used to work together, but we were all friends that loved food. And, it was almost just like a game. It was like, all right, let's see what's the best food we can do and how much fun we can have doing it. And it worked because it sold. I mean, it almost didn't even feel like work. We were just having so much fun. I mean, we were getting like 3 shipments from Japan every week from Skiji Market that was open at the time. We were getting fish shipped in from Australia, New Zealand, langoustines from Scotland. I mean, blue lobsters from Brittany. I mean, just anything you can imagine. Like if there was any really good quality product out there, we were getting it in, or we were trying to. We were getting this fish that was like $60 a pound coming from Skiji Market, and we couldn't, we were able to really focus on those ingredients, do the right techniques with it. Sometimes we were experimenting, but as long as we were able to make sure that we were selling it, it was very well received. And it was just, I was almost like impressed. It was one of those things where it didn't even seem hard. This was just what we all love to do, and we're in an amazing environment doing it. We got 1 Michelin star first year, 2 Michelin stars our second year. All the James Beard Awards, like pretty much it was in that first 2 years, anything you can imagine is that a restaurant gets awarded for. it was just kind of raining on us. I've never really focused on those types of things, but looking back, when I saw how many accolades Maria got in that first couple years, it was impressive. And because remember that was also what was that, '09? So that was like right after that big crash that was really affecting restaurants. Actually, when I was leaving WD-50, that was really negatively impacting WD-50. So it was a very scary time to be opening such an ambitious restaurant. It was like a $5 million restaurant back then, which today, who knows? But like all the wood from the interior was getting shipped in from Italy. All the installers were getting shipped in from Italy. It was just really no expenses spared sort of thing, which was very ambitious considering the times we were in. So Maria was a blast. I was buying like $50,000 a week worth of seafood, like from all over the world. So that really started. I don't want to say I grew up fishing and stuff like that in South Florida, so I always really had a deep appreciation for the ocean, for seafood, for really fresh, good quality seafood, I guess. But when I was working at Maria, purchasing all that seafood, that's where I really honed in on just I really just developed like a almost insatiable like I if there was good product out there, I wanted it. Like I wanted to figure out how to get it. It was just one of those things like that was my job, but it kind of turned into just something much deeper for me that I definitely carried with me for several years after that and even today. But it got to a point at Maria where I was sick of New York City. I'd been there for about 6 or 7 years at that point, and I just wanted to get out of the city. I loved my job. I loved the people I was working with. I just needed to get out of the city. So I put my notice in with Jared. It was like in the summertime. I told him, "Hey, by winter, I'm planning on leaving the city." And then that turned into Michael White asking me to go open up a restaurant in Hong Kong for him. So I was like, "Okay, well, I wanted to travel. I can get paid to travel doing this, so I'll give it a shot." And that was what I did. So I ended up going to Hong Kong to open up a restaurant called Molo. And that was the first international restaurant for Michael White at the time. And I spent about a little over a year there. Lots of challenges, the typical ones you would expect, on the other side of the world, language barriers, staffing, cultural differences, I guess, is the big thing. I was coming from a 2 Michelin star restaurant in New York to Hong Kong. I didn't realize this, but in a Chinese family, the only person that's allowed to yell at you is your dad. So I learned very fast, you don't raise your voice at people. Things like the red envelope on Chinese New Year, I learned that very fast. Definitely some cultural things. I had a blast just with ingredients because there's a ton of ingredients there. I used to have a guy that would deliver live cuttlefish, like huge cuttlefish, live shrimp, mantis shrimp. He'd literally ride a bike with a bucket of water on the back and deliver it to the restaurant. And I was like using things like live mantis shrimp to make stock, because it was very inexpensive, but I just had a blast with like that type of thing just because it's so rare that we are able to use that type of products here in the US. But for the most part, Hong Kong was my first chef job. So I took it very seriously. I wanted it to be the best I possibly could. The company that I was working for that was based in Hong Kong, we weren't 100% aligned, where I guess my focus was quality. And I wanted things to be the best they possibly can. This is my first chef job, so I'm taking it very seriously. There was definitely some disconnects there. So the company was very focused on numbers, very much, I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but I think there was just more I didn't have a full understanding of the company's culture, the company's morals and ethics, I guess, and their primary like focus, which again, I was 25 at that time, so I was probably not looking into that as deep as I should have. But now, since then, I've learned to do my research. So I ended up after about a year, I think it was 14 months total. I left Hong Kong. I resigned with Michael White and the Alta Marea group in New York. Went back to New York. I just finalized things with Michael White and Amos. They're the owners of the restaurant group in New York. Just to update them, let them know how everything was going. I did train somebody. I found somebody, trained them to replace me before I left, obviously. And then I wanted to get out of the corporate world. I found myself being 25, 26, on on a computer and a clipboard more than on a cutting board. And that's not why that was never why I wanted to do this. So I really focused on the things that I love about food and cooking and restaurants and hospitality. So I traveled around. My wife and I, who we met at Maria, she followed me to Hong Kong, and we were still together. We were not husband and wife, but we were dating at the time. We traveled around from Puerto Rico, Mexico, California, Florida. We basically just looked for anywhere that had a beach. We were trying to get there. So we were just trying to spend time on the beach with a beer, margarita, just kind of chill out. Like that was we took about 3 months off at that point.
Okay, that's good.
And then we ended up visiting my brother in California, and our plan was to go to Hawaii, but we ran out of money. So we stayed in California. We were in LA in Southern California. And honestly, I was really surprised at how much I really loved California. The weather was beautiful. It was very chill. Being a New York cook, we always kind of had this, like anytime somebody came from California, they were always like 5 times slower. It was like you know what I mean? It was just like, as a New York cook, when we saw California cooks coming, we kind of had like something in our head already, you know? So all that stuff was wrong. The whole like, I also had kind of like a superficial, I guess, somewhat had a, I don't know, misconceptions about LA and that area and what it would be like living there, what the people are like, and what restaurants would be like. I really thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And I started off working at a very small farm to table restaurant. I was going to the farmer's market every day, picking out the food, or the like produce, going to the fish market, picking out the fish, going to the restaurant, preparing it, open chef's counter, cooking in front of people, just being able to see their reaction, talk to them about the things they do and don't like. That was my first time ever being able to do that. And even being able to see that reaction is because like looks don't lie. You can read reviews, people can tell you, oh, that's great. But when you're actually watching somebody eat the food that you prepared, like for me, that was the first time I actually ever realized how important that is. Because that's how I could really understand small little things that even sometimes the people eating it don't know how to word it. I was able to kind of see that, and I really appreciated that. Granted, I was only making like $250 a week at the time. So I didn't really care. That wasn't really a focus of mine. It was always just, what do I need to be doing right now for myself or for my career? But my wife did get pregnant. My girlfriend at the time, but now my wife. She got pregnant, and I had to kind of kick it into gear. We were living in a studio apartment in Koreatown. I had a car that I paid like $800 cash for. I don't really know if it was a legal purchase, or I don't even know how that all went down. But basically, we weren't too worried about anything, and we were just trying to really enjoy life, see somewhere new. And I wanted to really get the most out of that area, LA, and the amazing produce that they have there. Because that is one thing that, I've not been anywhere else in the world that can compare to Southern California, and the variety of produce and the consistency, the year-round aspect of it, the different climates that are all within a driving range from LA is really incredible. So I ended up taking a job opening up a small restaurant called Sunny's Hideaway. That I met the owner through a friend of a friend, but that was a very small restaurant. It was supposed to be consulting, but then once my son was born, and we kind of stayed a little longer than we were planning on. So I think we stayed in LA for a total of about 2 years. When my son was 6 months old, that was when we decided we needed to come back to the East Coast, mainly because of family. My wife's from Puerto Rico. I'm from Florida. Our son was the first grandchild from both sides of our family. So our
You had to
family,
go back.
yeah, they hated that our son was all the way in California.
Yeah.
Nobody could, they had to fly out to see him. And so we had a lot of pressure from family. But also my wife and I, we didn't really have we couldn't have a date night. We didn't have that support that it's great to have with a young child as well. So there was definitely a lot of different, reasons for us coming back here. I initially moved back to open up a hotel in Deerfield Beach called the Royal Blues. That I had about 2 weeks notice to drive across the country in my Volkswagen Jetta with our little Chihuahua and our 6-month-old son. We made that trip, I think, 4 days. We found an apartment. We settled in Boca Raton, which is fairly close to where I grew up. And then within about 3 to 4 weeks of working on that project, it became very clear that this is not what I'm going to be doing. There was delays, and then I was expected to be a private chef for the owner, which entailed traveling all over the world with him, and it just wasn't what I signed up for. So I got out of that fairly soon, fairly quick. A friend of mine that I knew from New York named Giovanni, he had a restaurant down in Fort Lauderdale called Valentino. And at that point, it was probably one of the top restaurants in South Florida. It's high-end Italian, very similar to what I was doing at Maria. And I knew Giovanni because he used to go and stage at restaurants in New York City in the off season. So I actually met him at Maria in the first probably few months. He spent about a month up there. So that's how I knew him. But then he had reached out to me when he heard that I moved back down to Florida, and he asked me to go help out at the restaurant. So I started working with Giovanni down in Fort Lauderdale. It was a bit of a commute. It was about 45-minute drive to and from, or a 45-minute drive. But for me, that kitchen was just like New York City. So it was the first restaurant that I had been in since I left New York that just had that energy, but also the ingredients, because we were no expenses spared. If we wanted something, we were ordering it in. We were getting it. We were getting the best quality products we could. And if we needed to charge for it, we just charged for it. And we, quite frankly, a lot of the clientele there, they wanted the best products too. So it worked out really well. Same as Maria, where if you just focus on doing the best you can, using the best quality products you can, as long as there was people there to support it. So it worked out very well. I started there just kind of helping out covering different stations. I ended up taking over as chef de cuisine after like 6 months, just out of necessity. And at that point, my wife and I were really looking around South Florida, not just South Florida, but Florida, for what would be our restaurant. We knew we wanted to be working for ourselves. Just after just numerous different places after leaving New York, we couldn't really find someone that we were really happy working for, or a company that had the same, I guess, morals. I don't want to use that term too much, but the way that people do business, that was kind of what we constantly came across was we don't really feel proud being a part of this. And I knew whatever it was that I was doing, even if it was out of the restaurant, that I knew that I needed to feel proud of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's when my wife and I kind of realized we needed to do something on our own. So while I was at Valentino, we were looking at, from Key West all the way up to Jacksonville, we were looking at different locations. We had a few different business plans we were putting together, different concepts. And finally, we came across this one that just coincidentally is like a mile from where I was born, and very much like where I grew up. My pediatrician that I had is like right down there. When I was like 2 years old, I remember biting a chunk out of my dad's arm, trying to give me a shot. So there's a lot of childhood memories here that I have a big family. I played baseball down the street from here and stuff. So we just happened to come across this place. The property was for sale as well as the business. So that was a huge deal. We weren't looking to become landlords. We were just looking to open our restaurant. But if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be in business today. So this is looking back 8 years later. So that was about 8 years ago, 8.5. We ended up finding a restaurant called Scully's, and it was a diner. It had been open for about 15 years, and it was up for sale. We saw the potential it had. I still had no clue what a single menu item would have been, but I just knew that it had character. I knew that we could make this our own, this building. So we started. I didn't have any money, but we kind of just figured out how to get an SBA loan for the property, and here we are. So we've been open 8 years. Our menu has definitely evolved. There are some things that have been on the menu since day one, for the reason that those are things that center us. So there's key like our shrimp and grits, our chicken and dumplings, our dry rub chicken wings. There's just certain things that I like to keep on the menu because I haven't been able to come up with a better version of them yet. But B, they are things that I think really helps identify us as a concept, as a brand. And I think are very important to keep them as staples. And then everything else can kind of revolve around that, but it helps just kind of keep us centered. But outside of those few items, we change the menu every day. So we can print like in probably an hour, I'm going to be assessing everything. We're going to be reprinting the menu for today. We're not going to change the whole menu, but like for instance, right now I have a truck of golden tilefish that just landed. It landed last night in Cape Canaveral, which is about 2.5, 3 hours north of here. They're offloading this morning. They're on their way down here. I know we're going to have golden tilefish on the menu tonight. I know that there's a swordfish boats coming in off of Fort Lauderdale right now, about to land. I have a guy that's waiting to pick up about a 60-pound, which is a tiny sword. But I have I have people that kind of work for us, helping, just helping source these really special products that, and timing. Excuse me, timing is everything. So
Yeah.
just figuring out how to kind of coordinate all those things, extremely difficult, but I think that's the type of thought process that very, very few chefs or restaurant owners ever do. So, and that's just the way that I think is the best way to operate. It's definitely very expensive, and we haven't made any money in 8 years since we opened. I mean, whatever we make goes right back into the business, goes right back into, to the team, we've done plenty of improvements around the building and stuff like that. But the purpose of us being here is definitely very different than I think a lot of other restaurants around here. I think their purpose for being there is different. It's a business, right? So we want to we obviously need to survive, and we want to thrive as a business. But there's so many other things that go before the financial aspect that those have to be in place. If they're not, everything else is off the table, as far as I'm concerned. So sorry if that was
Do you still cook? No, that was a great story, by the way. But you mentioned something at the beginning. You said, I own my own place, and sometimes like it motivates you to cook. So do you still cook, or are you just focused on managing the place? Because this
Oh
supply
no,
chain
I
you
mean,
mentioned, it
I was
takes a
I
lot of
was
time
covered
to
in
manage.
sweat. I sweat through this shirt 3 times this morning. So I was trying to get a change. No, no. I mean, I'm the first one in every day. I open up the restaurant. I get everything started in the mornings. I like to, I do all the butchery. I have my role. So usually I'll be in first. I'm receiving deliveries. I'm getting all the big projects started, because we don't really have a prep kitchen. Our kitchen, like anything that needs to be prepped, it has to be done, cool down, put away before we open at 4 o'clock. So that's usually what I'm focusing on, is just getting all the prep items done, stocks going, any butchery, well, all butchery. And all of our fish comes in whole, scales on. So butchery is a big process. It's at least 2 to 3 hours every single day here. And yeah, I mean, I have my hands in everything here. I'm not on the line nowadays. I mean,
Okay,
I definitely, when we opened, it was myself in the kitchen with 2 people,
of
and
course.
my wife on the front with 2 people. Like that's in a bar, and we had a bar manager. That's how we started. Over 8 years, we've definitely grown. My son is 12 now, right? So my wife's more of a baseball mom. She does all the admin stuff in the mornings and stuff like that. But she's not necessarily here actively during service. I don't plan to be on the line cooking, because that makes me have to focus on one thing, whereas it's very difficult. Like my role has to be that general oversight. So I try to, I mean, yeah, at any given day, I need to be freed up to where what I need to focus on, whatever, basically putting out whatever fire is actively going. And sometimes that's different areas of the restaurant at different times. But yes, very much still actively involved with the restaurant.
Nice. Jimmy, you worked at 11 Madison Park, WD-50, Maria, and all the other restaurants and the places that you mentioned. Can you give me what is the one big lesson that you brought to Driftwood from all those places you worked at? The number one lesson.
The number one,
Yes.
intent. Like, I think
Okay.
there's so many cooks, chefs, restaurant owners. They do things because that's what they did when they were young. That's what the other chefs or restaurant owners or managers taught them to do, and so on. I think that whatever it is that you're doing, think about it. Make sure that it applies, because in every restaurant, every, any business for that matter is going to have its own nuances. There's going to be things that are different than other things, and things that are relevant now but may not be relevant next year. So keep in mind, we opened in 2018. Our 2-year
Okay.
anniversary was COVID lockdowns.
Oh my gosh.
We got
Yes.
through that. We figured that out. We had that whole year. Granted, at that time, my wife and I weren't even really paying ourselves. We couldn't afford to pay ourselves for that first few years. So when COVID happened, we had credit. We could barely pay our mortgage. We racked up so much credit card debt. So we had to adapt, right? You have to make sure that whatever it is you are doing makes sense. Because I think way too many people, they think that the way that they were taught to do it is the way that you do it. But in reality, like, those are the types of restaurants that are not going to be able to survive things like COVID or any major changes in the general atmosphere, in like an industry's atmosphere, which right now the restaurant industry is all screwed up. My opinion, it doesn't make sense right now. There's for a lot of reasons, which is a whole nother conversation. But the point is, if you're not thinking about what you're doing, if you just do what you think you know without actually putting that thought into it and making sure that you're doing it the right way with the right people at the right time, all those things have to kind of come together. Otherwise, you can be doing yourself a disservice, or you can be taking yourself in the wrong direction, not even realizing it. We've done plenty of that here, but I think that the number one thing that I could say that I took from life is make sure whatever it is that you are doing, that it makes sense, that you're doing it for the right reasons,
Nice.
at the right time, in the right place, whatever. That's what I would kind of summarize it.
You mentioned screwing up, so this brings me like to this question. What surprised you the most in the first year of ownership that nobody warned you about? You went from working in all those places to owning a place and managing, and you were engaged in everything. So what was surprising that no one warned you about? Something you never expected would happen.
That's a really good question, because I went into it expecting like chaos, just expecting like every day a fire. Um, I think having I really had a very open mind going into it.
That's good.
Well, because because I knew I had opened. I mean, I think this was like the eighth, seventh or eighth restaurant that I'd opened, been a part of the opening. So I had been through like numerous
Yes.
opening processes, which is always going to be the most difficult time in any restaurant. So I guess like I wouldn't say there was anything that really just like, oh my God, like
Yes.
I can't do this. I mean, if you want to fast forward a few years, like since I guess over the last couple years, insurance, nothing could have nothing could have prepared me for what we pay for insurance right now. It's absolutely insane. Like triple what we pay for our mortgage or our rent. It's ridiculous. So that's being in South Florida, but I mean that would be one of those things that I'd say, like, if you would have told me 10 years ago that that I'm going to be paying $220,000 a year for insurance if I own my own restaurant, I would laugh at you, you know? And I'm not talking about like
Yeah.
a big restaurant, Maria size restaurant. I'm talking about an 80-seat restaurant, with a parking lot, and we're a standalone building and stuff. But I'd say the insurance expenses right now that are just completely obliterating restaurants. That would be one of those things that I'd be like, no way, no way.
This is insightful, by the way. I never thought of it this way, but yeah, this brings a good point. Insurance.
It's crazy. It's one of those things you don't think. It's one of those things that, like, lately over the last few years. So when we saw inflation going crazy, and since COVID, we saw different layers of inflation. We saw pricing, we saw, eggs, you saw toilet paper and all that stuff that was in the news. But the thing with restaurants, the things that really, really increased was labor first of all. If you can't find the cooks, it ends up costing you more because you're paying the ones you do have overtime, and then you're burning them out, and then that ends up costing you more. So labor, just the raw cost of products. Okay, that's one thing. Food, the cost of the food is so minimal compared to all the other expenses. So like cleaning products tripled, maybe even quadrupled. Paper towels, soap, like that, the things that are not on the menu. That's what it comes down to. So when we have to increase our prices because of all the other things, but not the food, that's difficult for the consumers to put
Painful.
together because they're still comparing the price of your burger to the price of that burger or the price
Yeah.
of ground beef at the store. And you know what I mean? So that's been a really huge challenge is how do we hold our value as a business? Because we're also a restaurant that makes everything from scratch. So we rely heavily on labor. Luckily, I'm the one that fills in the gaps. So if we can't afford to pay for somebody to come in and do this, I'm doing it. If somebody calls out, I'm doing it. If for what, like I fill in those gaps. So I think that's one thing that our business has that I think a lot of other restaurants don't have. Whereas like those types of things would have put us out of business years ago. Like we just wouldn't have been able to recover from certain things if I wasn't able to just jump in and figure
Yeah.
it out.
Fill the gap.
Did I
Okay,
answer your
let me
question?
then yeah, that's more than the answer I expected, by the way. That's great.
All right.
And I would like to, I mean, I'm not going to take more of your time, but I have to wrap up with this question because you have all that experience. If a young cook told you, they wanted to follow a path like yours, from a small town in Florida, like you mentioned, to top NYC kitchens, to even like outside the country, to owning your own place, what would you tell them to do first? Someone just
There's
starting, what
plenty.
would be your advice? What?
Well, first of all, there's a few of those kids that are already doing that. So I've had kids coming the same high school that I went to, same culinary program. They've already been through here, worked here for a few years. There's three of them went through culinary school. One's in New York City right now. One's back here, but she went through the school, the culinary program to Thailand to a Michelin star stage back here. So I'm very big on that, on bringing up the younger generation and mentoring and giving them the right guidance and tools. As far as what I would say to somebody, never. I think that what I mentioned about using your head and thinking about what you're
Okay.
doing, making sure that whatever it is that you are doing is intentional and not just on repeat.
Yeah.
That would be one thing for sure. I've learned over the years how important your brain is for you. Sometimes you have to trick yourself. Humans by nature are lazy, right? So you want to conserve energy to survive, like there's certain very, I guess, like visceral, basic human instincts that we have to fight to get certain places in life. I think about those things all the time and how it affects me. But I think that the thinking about what you're doing, but also giving yourself the best chances. Does that make sense? If I know that I tend to be less motivated doing these projects, the only person that can fix that is me. So I need to figure out how do I motivate myself to do this? How do I become more excited? Not because like that's what I love to do, but because I know that that's my job and I need to do this faster, better, 10 times or 100 times, every day. So when you come across things like that, like certain challenges, it's more of because I've seen like things as simple as like peeling onions or picking herbs take somebody into a bad place where they can be great cooking on the line. They can crank out 100 dishes in an hour. But when it comes to certain tasks that say they don't like, or they maybe have never been taught how to do properly, or they just don't see it as important, if you don't have salt, you know what I mean? If you don't have like peeled carrots, like onions, like the things that are our core base products, like you need to take that as serious as you do foie gras, filet mignon, oysters, truffles.
Yep.
Because and that's what I think the younger generation just doesn't see. They don't see it as like they're excited about the expensive stuff or about the gels, the foams, the all the fancy stuff, the things that are different. I try to train my young cooks. Everything is important. And if you're not willing to sweep the floor underneath you, then you can get the fuck out of my kitchen. Excuse my language, but that's how I handle it. Like if you need to have a dishwasher following you around, you're useless to me, because I'm paying two people for you to do one job. You know what I mean? You and how there's plenty of places you're going to go. You're not going to have that person there. What are you going to do? Are you going to complain that they're not there, or are you going to figure it out? So I think that type of thing, and that's all psychological. That's all just like human what do we expect because that's what was there, that's what we were given, or that's what we were taught, or so I think the biggest thing that young cooks need to do is keep an open mind, and it's on you, right? You need to figure out certain things. I can't figure it out for you. I have some cooks that come through here we have had numerous cooks that they really struggle with certain things, or they just go blank when it gets busy or something like that.
Yep.
I can't fix those things. I can share how I've dealt with those sorts of struggles. I can make suggestions, but ultimately I'm not a psychiatrist, but I might as well be. Like just dealing with people, and especially when you're in kitchens, like that's like I don't want to say the max. I mean, you're probably firefighters, and there's plenty of first responders that probably have like a little bit more on the line than us. But a lot of people, what we really love about it is because of that adrenaline and that high energy. And you need to be able to turn that into focus. If you take that and you turn that into chaos and you just let everything happen that's going to happen, that's what the plate's going to look like. That's what the food's going to look like. And that's what your business is going to look like. So how do you kind of control all those moving parts, like being able to control it, make it make sense for you, but you really have to do it one thing at a time. So you have to be able to focus on one thing at a time while still seeing everything. I strayed way far from the question, but
that was really like deep. So that's really good.
Yeah.
That's a real answer. So
okay, as long as it works.
Yes. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for sharing the story, sharing the journey, sharing these insights. If
it can help somebody,
let's call it a roadmap for someone who's just starting.
I'm gonna get back in the kitchen, start butchering some fish soon.
Have a good day.
All right, you as well. Nice meeting you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.